So to save a bit of time, I'll introduce our guests while you read through the agenda, and they will introduce themselves when it comes time for them to speak. So if our guests can give a wave, in the panelists, in the speaking order of appearance, we have Haley Lapalme from Nourish, Kelly Gordon, Margaret Edwards in Spirit, Shelley Crack, Laura Salmon, Tessie Harris, all from our Nourish Indigenous and Allies Advisory. We have Mariah Magoswi, who has contributed to the artwork, Lisa Levi, who has contributed to the writing, and Brittany Grotier, who has contributed a gift for those who finished the journey, which I'll leave us as a little bit of surprise as we go along. We also have the rest of the Nourish team, Jen Reynolds, Robin Speedy, and Rachel Chang, who have supported so much of the work that we're doing and are in the back end today. So miigwech for everyone for contributing. And in saying all of this, if you have any questions as we go along, please feel free to drop them in the Q&A box at the bottom of your screen, or you can also share the comments as you have been doing in the chat box. So we'll try to answer as we go along, and we do have a short Q&A partway through. Lastly, if you haven't done so already, if you can mute your mic, that would be fantastic, because we are recording for folks that couldn't make today's section, and we would like to have the best time for everyone. So on that note, I would like to pass it over to Haley and Kelly to introduce themselves and Nourish and the history of the work that's gone into our campaign.
Miigwech, Meyer, thank you for that, and thanks too for recognizing Margaret Edgars. It's always sad when there is a loss in the families of important teachers of yours. So thank you for offering that tobacco for Margaret and her brother. So my name is Haley Lapalme, one of the co-directors at Nourish. I'm an 11th generation French Canadian settler based here on Treaty 13 territory in Toronto. And I am joined by my friend Kelly. Kelly, do you want to introduce yourself too?
Kelly Gordon, Mohawk Nation. I currently work as the team manager of health promotions at Six Nations Health Services. I'm a registered dietitian and been a part of the Nourish journey for almost 5 years, and currently one of the co-chairs of the Indigenous and Allies Advisories. And welcome, it's so awesome to see so many of you here today, and the amount of interest generated around something that we've put so much into over the last many years. So hopefully everyone enjoys it, and welcome. Thanks, Haley.
So Kelly and I are going to share a bit of a story about the evolution of this work, because this is work that has been in process, well, in community since time immemorial, and for Nourish really actively since in the last like 5-6 years since Nourish became a thing. And so Kelly and I are going to share some of what that journey is. And we hope that these stories help to set off and set up some of the other stories that you will hear over the course of this hour and a half that we get to share together as we slowly reveal to you this campaign that we've put together that we're so excited to have healthcare leaders be involved in. So the long arc of this work started back in 2016 when we were starting to build Nourish, and we asked, how can we respectfully engage with Indigenous leaders and Indigenous health when we're talking about food and healthcare? We know that these are places historically and even into the present day, places where there's a lot of violence and trauma. And we really quickly found teachers at the start of that journey when we were designing the program. And so one of my first teachers was Melanie Goodchild, and she led me to many things, including this idea that we needed to start our work with a talking circle with First Nation, Métis, and Inuit leaders to explore this question about how do we respectfully engage. And so a couple of the fellow panelists, so both Kelly and Elisa, were part of that journey, that talking circle, and it set off this journey that we went on. And you know, it was really it got into the DNA of Nourish that we needed to build the program in a way that made space for Indigenous leadership, worldviews, and and really celebrated those things. And so it led us to a number of things, including recruiting one of the members of that talking circle, Kelly, to be part of the first cohort. And then in the cohort of 25 health leaders from across the country, we wrestled with these big questions of, how do we get beyond land acknowledgements and just putting traditional food on the plate for a patient from time to time, and actually get into the bigger, deeper work of this. And that led our cohort to come up with a series of collaborative projects, one of them that was focused on this question of how do we get traditional food programs into healthcare settings respectfully, in a meaningful way. And I'm going to pass it back to Kelly to pick up the story from here about kind of what the Nourish cohort, and especially the team within that cohort, how they took on that question of advancing access to traditional food in healthcare.
Great. Yeah, Haley. So as one of the 25 innovators with the initial Nourish cohort, which started in 2016, which I can't believe it's been almost 5 years, I was proud to bring the work that we were doing and supporting at Six Nations Health Services, specifically the Healthy Roots Community Initiative. So really looking at revitalizing and invigorating our traditional food systems in the community. In initial conversations at the Innovator Cohort, was made up of many people from across the country, from frontline healthcare staff, such as dietitians like myself, hospital administrators, government and policy workers, all people who had this intense passion for food. Yet quickly we identified there was need for more focused work to support the accessibility of Indigenous foods in healthcare settings. The group began asking questions. So Haley kind of spoke of that, but some of the questions were, what are Indigenous foods? So people's understanding of what our foods are. The question of, can we create just a how-to or a guidebook with step-by-step process that can state, how do we get these foods on the plate in hospitals? Questions around, well, we don't have Indigenous patients at our hospital. Why is this relevant to me or to our organization? Comments referencing the TRC or the Truth and Reconciliation calls to action. So acknowledging that, this exists, but how does food fit into that? So from these honest and open dialogues, the work within Nourish really deepened and the Traditional Food Project team was formed. So like Haley said, initially we were set out to create some sort of step-by-step how-to guide. That was what we were being asked for. And as an Indigenous dietitian, got a lot of questions specifically about that. So how do I include these foods? Tell me what to do, right? So people wanted this kind of laid out for them. But we quickly pivoted in light of the conversations and in light of these questions we were hearing, and began to understand what the goal of the TFP became. It was more us wanting to communicate the why to people and not wanting to jump to the how. So the Traditional Food Project team consisted of 8 Nourish innovators, and we were supported by various Nourish advisors and team members. But we did feel we were still missing more voice of the community and elders and knowledge keepers. So what we did is we held a gathering in 6 Nations of the Grand River in the fall of 2018, where each of the Traditional Food Project team Nourish innovators invited a voice from their territory. So the themes at this gathering that came out were themes such as respect and love, networks and relationships, myths and misconceptions and stereotypes, racism in healthcare. These are some of the themes that emerged out of this gathering that have helped provide the guidance to the work that we're sharing with you today, and how food is a pathway towards reconciliation. As the first Nourish cohort concluded back in May 2019, there was still unfinished work within the TFP. So fortunately, Nourish supported us to continue this work, and the TFP explored various prototypes to begin extending out our messaging and work. So we spoke of things like an art installation or a project that was visible and showcased foods of different territories and storytelling methods. We spoke of children's books and again, stories, like how do we share out our message? We talked about learning journeys and getting hands and feet onto the earth and into the waters. We spoke of MOOCs or massive online courses. So we were really prototyping, brainstorming all sorts of different ideas and really looking at how we could extend our message of the why it is the responsibility of all of us, why Indigenous foods were important in all healthcare settings and how foods can support reconciliation and revitalization. So then in January 2020, the plans for the second cohort for Nourish were confirmed, and the Nourish Indigenous and Allies Advisory was formed, a space for the work of the TFP to continue, and importantly, a commitment from Nourish to prioritize work supporting reconciliation and Indigenous health through food. The advisory is made up of past Nourish innovators, elders, knowledge keepers, and those committed to moving this work forward. The Indigenous and Allies Advisory has worked hard over the last year, so hard, and with support from additional funds have been able to increase support for traditional food access in Indigenous communities and build upon the work that was started at the TFP table. This past fall, we formed a working group from members of the advisory, including Tessie Harris, Laura Salmon, and Mika Otway, and invited Lisa Levi to support this work as well. This work was also supported by Haley and Meyer, which we're ever so grateful for, and really excited to see what's come out of everything that we put our energies into. The group has worked to strategize on what can a campaign look like, what can be impactful to help answer the whys, and how to translate the message and the work of the TFP and Nourish. So I wanted to share a little bit more of where this all began, the 5-year journey we've endured, and I'm so thrilled to be here today to see everyone here joining us to be part of the Food is Our Medicine campaign launch. And I look forward to seeing how this work will continue to grow and impact much needed change. So I'll pass it back to Haley to tell you a little bit more about our journey and then leading into more specifically about our resources. Meow, everyone.
Meow and Kelly. So as you can tell from this story, there's a lot of moving pieces. A lot of people have been part of it. It's been a slow burn in many ways and lots of humility and having to kind of reframe and come back to the question we're asking to maybe ask a better question, sort of like what Meyer was alluding to with the feather she shared. And, the journey is not always a straight line. And certainly for us, you've seen different iterations of the work, and you've in the last even just couple of months started to see what has come out of our kind of recommitment to doing this work in a good way. And so along with the core funders that Nourish has, the Frontline Fund, which is, as many of you heard on our last webinar, a group of 160 hospital foundations from across the country, they came on board to support the work that we were doing to look at, post-pandemic recovery, closing the Indigenous health gap, and really how we can be building spaces for more Indigenous leadership and incorporation of Indigenous knowledge, community knowledge in the work that we're doing. So this is some of what we have been committing to, and you saw some of it last month when we launched the Why Hospital Food Matters for Reconciliation film that highlighted work from communities and healthcare leaders across the country who received one of the Indigenous Food RX grants. And you're about to see more of it today. So I invite you to kind of like scan this panelist, listen in the stories, like just to see and observe kind of how many people's heart and work went into this campaign that Meyer is going to reveal in a moment. And I want to thank especially kind of folks who were really went above and beyond, whether it's like Lisa, who is very near to officially being a doctor and is a really powerful voice and leader in the healthcare community, leading around Indigenous food sovereignty, but also settler collaborators who've supported this work in kind of this like project of braiding together the things that we know so we can move things forward. And so with a lot of excitement, I will pass it over to Meyer to present what exactly this Food is Our Medicine campaign is going to be. So yeah, thanks again from Kelly and I, and over to you, Meyer.
Thanks, Haley. I see that Shelley is here, so I'm going to actually pass it back to Shelley to say a couple of words if she would like, and if not, I can continue.
Thanks. I just want to make sure you can hear me because I missed sound check.
We can hear you.
Thank you. Thanks, Meyer, for inviting me. Actually, who I'm supposed to have beside me today is Margaret Eggers, who has been the elder that has been guiding this work alongside me. And she just sadly lost her brother yesterday, and so I just sat with her this morning and brought her some fish, and I just want to share some of her words about this morning. And it's mostly that she is just so proud and thrilled that we continue the journey of looking at why traditional food needs to be in our hospital settings. This has been work that Margaret has been, really engaged her whole life in. She grew up on the land and connected to traditional food. She's taught our children here on Haida Gwaii all the importance and value of that food. And when we started ramping up and trying to build more traditional food in our hospitals here on Haida Gwaii, it was Margaret who's just constantly nourishing and supporting this agenda, because she never fails to acknowledge how important it is. And I was reflecting when I heard Kelly about going to Six Nations of the Grand River with Margaret, and how special that was for me, and Margaret enjoyed being there as well. And I also remember the capstone events, and we had these events. And so I remember Margaret listening to a youth who was so passionate about traditional food and fighting for the land, and she saw herself in that youth. And I think it almost relieved her to know that there were Indigenous youth fighting for what she had spent her life fighting for. And if I was going to leave a final thought about Margaret Eggers today, it is that in May, when we did Capstone, we were at the end of the conference and we were sharing about the importance of our work together. And she stood up with Peter Senge, and she was asked, like, what are your final thoughts? And she said, I just finally feel heard. And the whole room was silent. And for an elder from Haida Gwaii to be in downtown Toronto at a huge conference around food, to feel heard, I think that is what we need to do more of. And I really hope this campaign facilitates more Indigenous voices feeling heard. How so much?
Miigwech, Shelley, those are beautiful words. And all the insight that was shared by Kelly and Haley, this really frames up the information that we're going to share today. And I'm just so thrilled to be part of this journey and continuing and supporting the work that you've done with the traditional foods. So now I'd like to introduce Food is Our Medicine campaign. My computer was just taken over by by me. So we really framed all the work we did around the Nourish Indigenous and Allies Advisory as we recreated this campaign. And that was the words that were to build the understanding that the narrative that food is our medicine, and recognizing the value and wisdom in Indigenous foodways and the diversity of practices. We were following the guide to provide healthcare leaders with knowledge and tools to decolonize food and healthcare, and use it as an organizational pathway to deepen conversations about systemic racism and reconciliation. We were also asked to share words to inspire action, engagement, and responsibility around Indigenous foodways in healthcare settings, and to build Indigenous leadership within healthcare. We were also asked to model the foundational values of respect, love, and balance throughout the learning journey and our campaign. And we were also asked a lofty goal to have 400 learners complete the learning journey by National Indigenous Peoples Day, June 21st, 2022. If you haven't gone to the next slide, that would be great if you could. And we wanted to know, we wanted to share who could participate in this. So we're looking for healthcare professionals who are interested in learning more about Indigenous perspective and worldviews and foodways, and who are committed to advancing reconciliation. So this could be physicians, nurses, administrators, I should say food service teams, social workers, dietitians, and policy and program professionals. So anyone who's involved in healthcare, we are hoping that you will engage in our learning journey. So if you could go to the next slide. Perfect, thank you. So you can see we have two main elements of this campaign. So the first is the Food is Our Medicine learning journey. So the journey is presented through 4 sets of modules, and they build upon and amplify the many years of work that were shared by Indigenous knowledge keepers, change makers, scholars, organizations, and individuals. So we wanted to bring together a diverse set of voices and celebrate and highlight a vast library of existing resources and materials in a very thoughtful way. So we chose the resources and reflection questions with healthcare professionals in mind. So it truly is designed for healthcare professionals to deepen their understanding of Indigenous history, culture, foodways, and how you can contribute to reconciliation and deeper understanding in your institution. So the second offering is the Indigenous Foodways Digital Library. We're also calling it a digital bundle. We wanted to apply an Indigenous lens to the work we're doing, so we thought digital bundle would be nice, and it was given to us by Elisa Levi. So Tessie will be bringing you a deeper dive into that in a moment, but I wanted to share that we offer this library as a complement to the learning journey. So if you want to read more or hear more about certain topics that you go through in your journey, then you will likely find the resources here. So if we go to the Food is Our Medicine learning journey slide, it invites diverse healthcare staff such as senior leaders, physicians, nurses, and food service directors to embark on a personal learning journey. So you will journey through 4 sets of virtual modules that are based on the 4 seasons. So we're going to begin with fall, and we're releasing that this week. And then you will journey through winter, spring, summer. And each season has 4 lessons that we are calling teachings. So in total, there will be 16 teachings, and it's approximately 15 hours in length, and it's designed for you to go through at your own pace. We've also created 4 fillable or printable, whichever medium you like to work in best, worksheets for you to keep track of your notes and reflections and journaling activities to share with Nourish when you're completed. We won't be sharing these publicly, so we will keep them private, and we will ask permission if there's anything intriguing that we could share with the public. So everything is hosted through the Nourish website, and it will be available to you as you go through the modules. So there will be technical prompts designed to keep you on track through email reminders and encouraging nods as you finish each teaching. So we hope that after you go through your personal learning journeys, that you create a groundswell of decolonization in food, healthcare, and reconciliation in action from coast to coast to coast. You will be able to do this by highlighting Indigenous stories, voices, and ways of knowing. And this work honors food is our medicine. So I'm sure you've noticed by now there's amazing artwork, and Mariah is going to share this a little bit further. So I just don't want to keep you asking questions just in case there's going to be more information after Tessie and I share. So if we go to fall, so this is Seeing the Path. It invites you to look back within and around to understand why Indigenous foodways involve so much more than food. This part of the journey aims to make you more aware of the complexity of integrating Indigenous ways of being and doing into healthcare in Canada. So you will build on this awareness as you move through the seasons of the learning journey. We included this because we cannot talk about reconciliation and culturally mindful healthcare until we understand these forces and the systemic disadvantages that persist for Indigenous people in Canada. This part of the journey begins with an invitation to consider multiple perspectives and personal orientations and biases that shape your own worldview. Then we will present several historic and present day examples of the colonial processes in healthcare that continue to marginalize and harm Indigenous people. So only after acknowledging and understanding systemic challenges can we move towards meaningful systemic change. So this will bring us into winter with ways of relating. So with increased awareness and understanding of challenges within the healthcare system, we wanted to look at how relationships form the foundation for moving forward towards reconciliation. So this part of the journey will take you through winter, which we consider the path of relationships. So winter shares from diverse and distinct Indigenous communities across Turtle Island and shows how they continue to practice, reclaim, and revitalize culture, language, and tradition. So with support and guidance from elders, knowledge keepers, stories and ceremonies, and local Indigenous knowledge can continue to be passed down through generations. So winter is a time for storytelling and sharing these teachings. In Canada, there's an urgent need to move from discussion to action on reconciliation. As someone working in healthcare, the relationships that you build with colleagues, clients, and patients can directly support or oppose reconciliation. So the teachings that you will encounter will reflect on how your values, priorities, and perceptions inform your relationships, and propose that respectful collaboration relationships can transform healthcare in Canada to better meet the needs of Indigenous patients and families. So then we're going to journey through spring, and it's about coming to know. The seeing of Indigenous ways of knowing, particularly related to Indigenous foodways. So you'll go through the processes of harvesting, cultivating, sharing, and honoring food as one of the many reciprocal relationships between Indigenous people and their environment, history, and culture. So we could not capture the full diversity and complexity of all the Indigenous food systems in a short course, but instead we introduced several examples and perspectives from across Canada or Turtle Island of traditional foods, teachings, and practices. So the examples highlight the immense value of traditional foodways and contribute to mental, spiritual, physical, and emotional health, as well as how we engage with these foodways and how they build relationships and kinship with communities and all of creation. So the journey then follows through summer and is about ways of doing. So here we feature policies that have had long-standing impact, as well as elevated the work many communities and Indigenous communities are doing to strengthen their foodways and healthways overall. So Indigenous food perspectives and practices respect natural law and ways of doing, and is about restoring balance. And what we hope by the time you get to summer is that you'll be wondering, how is this going to affect my place in the work, and how can I put this into my practice? So during the final part of the learning journey, we provide ideas and tools to move forward in partnerships with those that you work with. Not all relationships and work are the same, and we know that the teachings in summer will also showcase examples of programs that are underway in healthcare that will help you move your projects forward. So our learning is never final, and we always put humility in our work first. I will save how to sign up for the learning journey at the end, because I don't want people to get distracted signing up on our website. So I'm going to pass it over to Tessie to share about the Indigenous Foodways digital bundle.
Wonderful, thank you, Meyer. So first I'll take a moment to introduce myself. My name is Tessie. I'm of German and Scottish ancestry, and I'm currently living on the unceded and traditional territory of the Coast Salish peoples, the Musqueam, Squamish, and Tsleil-Waututh nations. I'm a registered dietitian, I'm a past Nourish Innovator, and I am a proud member of the Nourish Indigenous and Allies Advisory. So I've been honored to work alongside the Nourish team and collaborators, as Kelly mentioned, our journey over the last few years, but particularly over the last few months, bringing this together. So here I want to share a little bit more about the resource library, which, as Meyer mentioned, we're also calling the digital bundle. So this is an online place to come and where we've brought together knowledge, tools, and supports for advancing Indigenous foodways in healthcare. So it's designed to complement the learning journey. So for learners that are looking for either specific information to support their learning or examples of what others are doing, you can come to the digital bundle to find out more. It's on the Nourish website. And we included themes that cover traditional and country food programs, Indigenous foods and food systems, food sovereignty, looking at Indigenous ways of knowing and two-eyed seeing, culturally mindful healthcare, food safety, as well as organizational policies that support Indigenous food programs. So this will continue to evolve over time as new resources are put out into the world. And we hope that it's a space where we can continue to amplify the amazing work of organizations and individuals across Turtle Island that are advancing Indigenous foodways. So you can check that out on the website, and I'll pass it back to Maya.
You got Tessie. And now we're going to invite Mariah to share some insight on the designs that she made to make this come alive. Mariah.
Hi, Miigwech Mayor. Thanks to everyone, all the panelists for having me, and for everyone joining, for listening. I'm Mariah Miwoski. I'm an Anishinaabe Kwe and settler from the northern shores of Lake Huron, and my family is from Ganabajing or Sipper River First Nation, and I grew up between here and Elliott Lake, Ontario. I'm also a graphic designer and an illustrator, and I was lucky enough to work on this campaign alongside the amazing team at Rally to create the campaign visuals and the overall identity design. So today I'm going to be sharing a little bit about those and how we got there. So when I started out, I wanted to know what food is our medicine really means. Why is it medicine? Why is it important? So I started with those questions and then started looking at the intersections between food and medicine and learning, and pretty quickly realized that Indigenous foodways and histories and ways of knowing are all very, very closely intertwined. So when you think about foods and harvesting methods and growth patterns, they're all so specific to small pockets of land across Turtle Island, and the stories and the pedagogies behind them are even more specific to communities and families. So that said, maintaining the connection between all of them is critical when we speak about not only health and well-being, but also about Indigenous futurity as well. So visually, me and the Rally team explored concepts that centered connection and relationships and storytelling, and all of the networks that foodways create. And then in the end, we decided to go with a kind of digital beadwork concept. And that was selected because of its sense of celebration and growth, and also its ability to hold so much color and so many different symbols within it. So if you want to go to the next slide, I'll talk a little bit about icons. So from here, we chose a theme to represent each section of the learning journey, which Maya spoke a little bit to as well. Because it's a journey and there's 4 sections, it made the most sense to represent them and the process of working through them as well through seasons. So the 4 seasons also encapsulate so much within themselves as well. There's a lot of associated symbolism when you compare them to other teachings like the medicine wheel. And then within that system, each season is represented by colors that are associated with that season or the food, and then a food as well for each one. So for the first one, for fall, it all begins with a seed. So we started the journey off here with corn, which is usually harvested in the fall. It's a symbol of harvest and growth. And then that circular pattern that you can see radiating out from the center feels like growth and celebration. There's lots of movement and things at play. And the circles themselves are also a nod back to the actual Nourish logo. And I also wanted to include that each illustration has a small seed bead. So there's that one white bead that's just a little bit off from the rest of the pattern, which Britt's going to share a little bit more about later on. The next one, winter. It was important that we represent, or at least did our best to represent, lots of different geographic areas and communities and the foods associated with them. So for winter, we chose the Arctic hare. And then there's also 3 clusters of 7 little Arctic flowers as well. For spring, that's actually, I mean, now, and it's when the pickerel start to run in my community, which is where I am right now. And that's what I was doing last night. I was spearfishing. So when I think about spring, I think about fish running. And it's not just pickerel, it's also salmon start to run as well for other communities. So for the spring, we wanted to show a couple of fish running up and down the stream. For summer, we ended with the abundance of summer of the strawberry, and the strawberry is, again, a symbol of so many different things in so many different communities. Has a lot to do with celebrating and with ceremony. And then another big teaching about strawberries as well is how it carries its seeds at the front of it. And that's kind of a nod to futurity and growth again. So that's how we landed on the strawberry for summer. So to recap, I think we have all of them together here. Yeah, so here's a quick recap. All of the beadwork illustrations side by side. So fall, winter, spring, and summer. And then the main poster or illustration here, we've kind of taken all of the elements from each season and then represented them here in one big celebration of food and all of the interconnectivity between food and the seasons, and the circularity that we had as a base and all of the other ones has been used here to kind of have like a dance between all of these different elements. So to recap, there's 2 corns on the left and the right for fall, the Arctic hare above for winter, the fish running below for spring, and then the 7 strawberries around the center for summer and for futurity. And if you noticed at the center, we've integrated our main campaign symbol, which is a amalgamation of all of the other ones. So you can kind of see like the strawberry in there, and then the corn opening up, and the fish right in the center. So all of those are included in the main campaign symbol. And then surrounding that, there's beads that hold the main colors for each season as well. And that has been kind of developed alongside Britt and then translated into what she will share later on. And that's that. Thanks so much, everyone. Shimigwech.
Gosh, Mariah, it's beautiful. We have been so excited to share the artwork for this campaign. And this is just, yeah, it's so nice to have this live. It gives me shivers, and there's lots of comments in the chat box lighting up too, just commenting how beautiful it is. So thank you. It's not an easy job to synthesize so much meaning, and what our Indigenous and Allies Advisory was saying that it was important to have kind of come through, because we knew that art was a really important part of this campaign, because picture tells the expression. It's really powerful, and you did a really amazing job. So we're so pleased to have been able to work with you on this, and can't wait to get to more art later with Britt. So you can see there's lots of collaborators on this, and we're going to move into a bit of a collaborators discussion next. And so we're going to have the chance to hear from a few members of the working group from the IAA who work most closely on this. So from Laura Salmon, who's joining us from the Yukon. And then you'll also hear from Tessie Harris, who is helping to coordinate that writing group. And as she mentioned, is a former innovator who is really involved in the TFP's initial work. And then we're also going to hear from Elisa Levi. So before I get them all to introduce themselves and take you through one aspect of what our working group was doing, I also want to acknowledge that we had 2 other collaborators. And so we worked with Rally that Mariah mentioned, so communications agency that helped us to get all of this visually pulled together, and has been a really wonderful partner, and also with Brightweb, and they helped us get our website all leveled up so that we could handle the amazing resources that the Indigenous and Allies Advisory was sharing with us and asking us to do an even better job of sharing, and to be able to host this learning journey with you. So just want to acknowledge those 2 partners as well. And also there was members of the Turtle Island Institute team who were part of the writing group. So thank you to them as well. That's the organization that was started by Mulaney Goodchild, who I mentioned right off the top of the webinar. So I'm going to start with Tessie. So Tessie, I'm hoping you can speak a little bit to us just about the process of coordinating this settler Indigenous writing group and how we approach the design of the modules, if you can share some reflections there.
Yeah, sure. Thanks, Haley. So I was honored to support the coordination of the collaborative writing process, like you just mentioned, our various collaborators. And we came at it from 2 main directions. Firstly, we looked back to the work of the TFP that Kelly spoke to at the beginning, where we did a lot of examining of the system surrounding Indigenous foodways in healthcare. What are those myths and stereotypes and barriers to those programs, as well as how can we respond to gaps in understanding, and how can we make sure that people have the tools and supports that they need when they're ready to move forward with community on traditional food programs. So those were the key themes that we identified. And then the second direction was doing a wide resource scan with looking for resources that support these key messages. So looking at where there's reports or videos or just teachings that were either shared with the Nourish team or found online or found through our organization, like the networks, and where those 2 places intersected, we came together to build the modules. So where we had resources that supported the key themes, we then collaborated with writers to build on that platform. So we brought in perspectives from Indigenous system thinkers. You mentioned the folks from Turtle Island Institute, different healthcare professionals. I know we'll hear in a moment from Lisa Levi and Laura Salmon, and then the Nourish team, as well as myself, who all collaborated to build the modules of the learning journey. So I'll pass it over to Elisa to share her perspectives.
Hi, everyone. My name is Elisa Levi, and I'm joining you today from St. Catharines, the traditional territory of the Haudenosaunee and the Anishinaabe. I'm happy to be here. I am currently at McMaster University studying medicine, as Haley mentioned, just about to finish up and start residency at McMaster in Owen Sound. So if you've ever asked yourself this question, I imagine you have, why and what does reconciliation in healthcare mean to me? The value of this work lies in the answer, and it's learning. And for those of us who've learned new things or have built upon learning, it's the journey that's most transformative. As Haley mentioned, as years later now, in her opening, I reflected on that circle and just in these brief moments, thinking about how many people who were invited to that circle when the McConnell Foundation wanted to take on this work really shared that learning is about listening, and being allies is also about listening and finding the unique journey that takes you where you go from what you learn in that whole process. I really believe, as someone who's dedicated my career to food and in nutrition, that food is a tool for learning. It's food is first, food is last in just life in general, right? But in terms of Canadian health policy, food has had an enormous impact on Indigenous peoples, continues to impact the realities and that are faced by our communities. There is so much to be learned. And it's also an area where there's a lot of beauty, right? I think already what people have shared in terms of the resource, the work that's been done, the art around it, the way the modules have been set up. I was deeply honored to be asked to just jump in and help facilitate some of that learning for healthcare professionals to help facilitate your learning journey. So as healthcare workers, we have many entry points to the work in reconciliation. And I think food is, as has been said here, a great place to start. So you've asked yourself this question, that's why you're on this webinar right now, but I know there's colleagues, I've had colleagues say, what's my place in this work? And I think, it would be great to share this, invite your colleagues to use food as a gateway for learning and learning from Indigenous ways. So thank you for inviting me to this, and I look forward to taking a look at the site and all that's on it in the digital bundle.
Thanks, Elisa. One of the most humble people I think I have met, who also led a similar or different course at Ryerson around Indigenous food sovereignty and foodways. And so we're very lucky to have her in our writing team. Before I pass it to Laura Salmon, I just want to remind folks, use the Q&A in the bottom right of your Zoom screen. We're going to have the chance to get some questions and answers with some of the folks that you've heard from so far. So chat for kind of comments, reactions, and the Q&A for any questions. And yeah, miigwech again. Thanks, Elisa. Oh, you're muted. Elisa, you're muted. I think you're trying to say something. We can't. Oh, okay. All right. Okay, so Laura, we'll go to the Yukon and introduce Laura Salmon, a member of the Indigenous Allies Advisory and the working group who is closely involved in this.
Hello, everyone. Hedi. Greetings from Whitehorse. Snowy Whitehorse, still enjoying some skiing. So I live and work and play and ski on the traditional territories of the Tonquetchon Council and the Kwanlidun First Nation. And I've been fortunate to work with the Yukon hospitals for a long time. Maybe I shouldn't say how long, just because I'll age myself a little bit. But working in the area of Indigenous health, we're really proud to have a leading program, kind of the envy of the country, with traditional foods and traditional medicines and navigation stuff and healing spaces, and it's all really wonderful and a little bit exhausting at times. So if you're in a position of trying to lead Indigenous health initiatives, or if you feel like you're in a leadership position and you should be trying to advance this work, or just as an individual trying to figure out what this might look like, this is the course for you. The learning journey does a little bit of what we've been trying to do in Indigenous health, and my experience really recently with working in Yukon hospitals is this idea of indigenizing the institution. And what that means is creating a little bit of a shift, creating a little bit, lightening the burden a little bit on these Indigenous health leaders, and seeing individuals really pick up on some of that responsibility for themselves. So what the course does is it provides everything someone should need to really dive into in a really rich way. Not just information where they're going to be, passively just reading and absorbing, but also given an opportunity to reflect. And that reflection and that thinking and getting to the worksheets at the end of the modules is really where a lot of that learning takes place. There's learning there, but there's also inspiration. There's inspiration for what is that next thing I need to do, or what is that next opportunity that I'm going to take advantage of that next meeting where I'm going to, speak about this or that. So I'm really proud of this, the learning journey and where we got to in terms of scope. It doesn't try to, it doesn't leave out really important information, and that digital bundle is gold. The work that this whole team put into just selecting just a wonderful package of resources, you'll have a lot of bedtime reading for a very long time. So I was proud, and so I think for leaders and people in the area of health, we're always kind of drawing on the grandfather's teaching of, or at least for me, balancing bravery and humility. We really need to put this information forth and really try to gather, if you call it a community of practice or just a bunch of like-minded people, really share and promote this resource so that there's safety in numbers. You've got a group. You'll be working on it together with like information, and together I think we can accomplish so much more. And no one can do it on their own. So gather those people around you, get them in and on this learning journey, and I wish you all the best of luck with this and all of your work in healthcare.
Thank you, Laura, and also for your amazing leadership in the Yukon, but also nationally around Indigenous foodways. Yeah, you're an important teacher for so many of us. So yeah, thank you. So we're going to move to a Q&A, and I'm just going to recap a few things, and I'm imagining some people have meetings that they have to go to, but we are saving a special reveal for the end of the webinar for those that can stay on. So to recap, the learning journey it's for healthcare professionals. It takes roughly 15 hours to go through. It's self-paced, so you can decide how long to spend on it. We're encouraging take like either 30 days or 100 days. So the length of a month or the length of a season. Like Laura is saying, find your colleagues or find your friends who you want to go through this journey with you, because there's some hard work in it. We know that this is a journey that can bring up big emotions. We saw that in the cohort. There's lots to process as we kind of fumble our way forward in this work. So do that. We have designed it in a way that there's a worksheet at the end of each of these seasons. That's a way for you to also be showing us kind of what you're learning so that we can learn with you, and as a way to give feedback to also be improving future versions of this. So take a moment to share a question in the chat. There's one, and I'm just making the distinction between the chat and the Q&A. So the chat's in the middle left of your screen and the Q&A is on the right. It's easier to catch your questions if they're in the Q&A. Because there's a lot of comments coming in. There's one from Joey Jacob, who is working for a charity that increases food security in Northern Indigenous and remote Canadian communities. And he's just asking, can they also participate in the learning journey? So the learning journey is specifically for healthcare professionals. And some of the programming and the recognition for the program are exclusively for healthcare professionals, but we would totally encourage you to take it as a way to continue to learn, as I am and others are, how to practice allyship. So you're more than welcome to. It is designed for health folks who are working in whether it's community, acute, long-term health care. That's who it's designed for, but you're welcome to do it. Rachel Bauer is asking, or Rochelle, can you do it alone? Yes, you can. We're just encouraging you to find peers to go through it with you. And I'm hoping, let's get some questions to the speakers too, beyond practical questions. I'm trying to blitz through the practical ones, but any good questions for Lisa, Tessie, anyone that you heard from so far. So yeah, you can do it alone, but we're recommending you find at least one other person from your organization to do it with. As Myra mentioned earlier, we have a goal by National Indigenous Peoples Day 2022 of having 400 healthcare professionals having gone through the course. And we're also looking for 100 organizations. And so if you want your organizations to be listed kind of as recognized for having done it, that's something that we're offering as well and have a goal related to that. We'll also be offering seasonally a kind of community of practice or meetup group to go through whatever learning journey module you're on at that time. There's a chance to kind of come together and share and meet some of the other people who are going through this with you. So you have to stay tuned to hear more about that. Okay, so Stacy Pope is asking, how do we connect to the speakers presenting today? So I don't know if any of the speakers want to chime in. You might have to chase them a little bit. I will say they're all really busy people with lots on their plate. So I'll invite them if they would like to share their contact information in the chat. So we're not putting them too much on the spot. You can go through the Nourish site as well. The innovators are listed. There's a general Indigenous Foodways at Nourish Healthcare email address that you can use as well to we're having people share their worksheets back when they're done the 4 modules. But if you have questions, you can send them there. Okay, Camelia Tuzani. Sorry if I have your name wrong, but you're asking, in your capacity as policy analyst of the Government of Canada, where can I access your research to inform policy reform? So my co-director and myself are probably very delighted to hear that question coming in. We would be really happy to follow up with you about this. Part of the work of this campaign is to continue to advance the work that we're doing provincially, territorially, and also federally to have to create a more enabling policy environment for Indigenous foods to be used and valued within the healthcare system. So the digital resource library, the digital bundle, is one place that you can access a lot of research. We would be happy to guide you to whatever more specifically you're looking for. So we can put mine and Jen's email in the chat for you there. All right, Myra, do you want to tag in and do some of this with me? Now it's a fire hose. So we've got another one. So from Rochelle, again, any suggestions for how to collaborate on creating a healthier whole food ecosystem? So who on our panel wants to take this question? I feel like this could be a good one for Kelly or Elisa. I'm putting you on the spot.
I tag Elisa first.
So suggestions for how to collaborate on creating a healthier whole food ecosystem. Big question. Any quick thoughts off the top? You don't have to solve the whole problem, but.
Yeah, I think that's there lies the answer, not solving the whole problem and but finding your place in what you can do, right? Because sometimes it's more, but I think with this, if we're speaking today about this learning journey around food, there's so many parts, and having gone through it and added some components to the course, that there's so many parts where you can find that inspiration using Indigenous ways of knowing to make a difference. And I think there was a comment in the chat earlier, like, this isn't just about Indigenous people, like it's about our total food system and some of those pearls of wisdom and knowledge and work that's underway to make changes, and especially in healthcare. So I think, that's not a very straight answer, but it's one that is related to what is in those 15 hours of learning.
Thanks, Elisa. Yeah, that's a good start. I think go through the learning journey, and I think you'll find lots of answers or starting points, threads to follow. I just realized, actually, Myra asked you to come help me do this, but I realized we need to move on in a moment. So maybe I'll just do a couple more and then we can move. Crystal Harvey is a nurse and a member of an Indigenous advisory board, and she's been asked to contribute to a meal plan that recognizes Indigenous foods for the cafeteria, I'm assuming at your hospital. Does this course include practical components to help me create meal ideas to share? Tessie or Kelly?
I can start. So yes, it will help provide you with resources, but a lot of that, again, it's that connections that you make within the community, connecting to the territory in which you're on, the land in which you're on, and the foods that come from those lands and the people of the lands. So I think it's a very common question, and it's kind of what the TFP was initially asked, like, just tell me what I need to serve, right? Because we're busy, we need to make decisions, we have lots of considerations when we're making these decisions in food service. And the ask was, tell me what to do. But we want to push you a little bit more. We want you to think about the whys that you're doing, what you're going to be doing, and then leading into the hows. So again, it's about that relationship building, understanding what is it that the Indigenous patients and the non-Indigenous patients would benefit from. How do you highlight? How do you educate? How does that food create that dialogue within the setting? So I think it's a really interesting question. Like I said, is common, but it's a bigger question than just here's the list of foods. There will be ideas for sure, but we want to push people to really consider the process and how they're making those decisions in doing what they'll be doing with food in their healthcare settings. Tessie?
I absolutely agree. I think that the process is always going to start with building relationships locally. So in the learning journey, you'll find guidance on sort of exploring your own perspectives and how you're coming to the work, and a lot of encouragement to reach out to those around you. So the Indigenous peoples of the area, the clients and patients that you serve. And yeah, so I echo what you said, Kelly. It starts with relationships. It's a collaborative process. The learning journey guides you through that process, and but it's not a step-by-step, here are the foods, here are the food safety sheets. That is work to be done locally, and we're hoping that this journey supports everyone to find their own path.
Mm-hmm. Thank you both. This is one of the reasons we're encouraging, not requiring, people to find colleagues from their organization to go through the journey with them, whether it's the same time or the next month, doesn't really matter. But because it's complex, slow work that happens at the pace of relationships, there's no copy paste models how to do this work well. And so it's nice to have people to think through it with you. And so, there are folks asking, my daughter's in pre-med school, can she be in my team? Yeah, anybody can be in your team. There's not a specific structure to it. It is designed to be for an individual to go through at their pace. It's just that we're recommending, because of the complexity around this, because you're going to ask questions like, oh wow, whose land is this? Actually, what do treaties have to do with what I'm serving or not serving on traditional, on my hospital trays? It can be nice to have folks to go through it with. So looking at it, so think of it from that perspective. There are lots of questions also from the chat and the Q&A. Does it cover things about like mercury? Does it cover like different kinds of recipes that I can use? How to do direct patient engagement? It will ask lots of big questions and provide some conceptual and some practical advice, lots of connections to case studies and different resources where you can go and continue to learn from this. So if you're asking any of these questions, the thing I want to encourage you is we sometimes might not answer the question you want to have it be answered. It might not be a direct answer, but actually your journey to find the answer to your question is actually, I think, where the power in this journey is. So I encourage you really go through the 4 modules with a colleague, come to one of the community of practice meetups that happen seasonally, engage people in your organization conversationally, put up posters that we'll share for the campaigns to bring more people into it, because it's not something that changes au jour au lendemain. It's a slower work. So I'm just going to answer a question about French and then pass it to Meyer. And Meyer, James Delorme is asking a question. So maybe you can answer his question as you set up the what happens when you finish the learning journey. So French, currently the campaign is only available in English. If there is enough of a critical mass of Francophones that want to do it, we would really love to be able to offer it in French with the frankly timelines that we had. It could just be in English for now, but we are exploring the possibility of translating the learning journey into French. That would not be the resources, but the learning journey itself. So get in touch with us if that's something that you're interested in. So thank you to our panelists and contributors for sharing. Meyer, back to you to move us along.
Miigwech, everybody, and thanks, James, for asking that question. One of the reasons why I was so excited to be part of this and to join Nourish was all the work that I've been doing in my previous positions. I found that what was missing was food. And food is so important to connecting people and working together. And when it comes to hospitals, I know hospitals can be a very intimidating place for Indigenous people. When we walk through the door, sometimes we don't feel so welcome. So part of what I'm really hoping that this learning journey and campaign supports with healthcare workers is how to have a better understanding of Indigenous history in Canada and how we are actually treated when we are in hospitals sometimes. So I'm really hoping it changes some of the fears that we have when we go to hospitals and elders have when they have to travel and eat good food and be treated a little bit differently or a lot differently through this campaign. So miigwech, everybody, for sharing. And I'm going to ask Robin if she would share the slides again. And I know this is going to take over my computer for a second, so if you could just bear with me while they're sharing. Thank you. To go back to my notes. So I'm going to share what happens once you complete the learning journey. So once you go through all the 4 seasons and you share all your worksheets with us, we will send you a certificate in the email or through email if you would like. And this will recognize your contributions to the campaign and all the work that you've been doing. If you could go to the next slide, please, Robin. This is the big reveal, very exciting. We also have 200 handmade beaded pins that my friend Brittany is making for the first 200 learners who complete this journey. So this pin was carefully designed by Mariah and the folks at Rally Rally and our advisory and our team and Brittany. And there is a lot of work that's been put into it and thought into it. So I'm going to invite Brittany to share about herself and the process of creating this pin right now.
Absolutely. Thank you, Meyer, for the introduction. Ani, Brittany Deshnakas, Mishpachatan First Nation, Donjaba, North Bay Donda, Anishinaabe Kwayandao. So I was just speaking Anishinaabe in the dialect from my reserve. So I'm from Mishpachatan First Nation. I currently live in North Bay, Ontario, and I'm really excited to be a part of this process. So this is what the pin looks like. It's really wonderful to be a part of this process, and a lot of hours and time and effort go into my beading. Just for example, the process it takes to glue the epoxy kabachins that I made onto here, it takes 24 hours for this to set before I begin beading. Every pin will be slightly different as the spirit bead is in a different location for every pin. So the spirit bead here is white and the spirit bead on this one is down here. So I wanted to share a teaching about what a spirit bead is and what it means to me. I do have medicines prepared here. I think that it's really important that I incorporate traditional sacred medicines into my beading. So I use medicines before, during, and after I bead. I have sage here and I lit and I smudged it at the same time as Meyer. I smudged myself. So I wanted to talk about what the concept of a spirit bead is. It's incorporating a single or multiple beads that are purposely placed outside of the pattern. It serves a very important function to place these outside of the pattern. So again, this is what I'm talking about. This white spirit bead here is outside of the pattern. This is a reminder that everything is a spirit inhabiting a being, a body, a plant, and animal. And it's also part of the 7 grandfather teachings. So this teaching talks about honesty, courage, respect, humility, truth, and wisdom. And as part of humility, that means to recognize that no one is perfect and not to hold yourself above other beings. Placing a spirit bead outside of the pattern helps to keep yourself humble and practice humility. Spirit beads also recognize other spirits within our beading. So the symbol here in the middle took many, many hours of meeting with Rally Mariah to design the concept and come up with. Incorporating the spirit bead and depicting those other spirits welcome, acknowledge, and represent spirits within our work. So I think that it's really important to acknowledge spirit beads, and these are also shown in Mariah's visuals that were shared earlier. Yeah, so I wanted to say I really appreciate the opportunity, and I appreciate being able to share these with the first 200 learners who complete the learning journey. Miigwech, Gainsa.
Miigwech, Brittany. We're very, very excited about this part too. There's just so many exciting parts that we're sharing today, so very happy to share that. We also would like to share that when the beads, the pins are finished, we are also going to hold a ceremony for the beads, and Smudge and the Indigenous and Advisory, we're all going to get together virtually and hold a ceremony to offer good wishes and good intentions for those who wear the beads and receive the beads at the end. So now we're going to move on again, and Haley's going to share a little bit more about what you can do next for the campaign.
All right, so we are almost at the end of our time. So you want to get involved. We are going to be sending to everyone that's on this webinar a welcome package that introduces you to some of the core elements of the campaign that we shared today. And we want to encourage you to share that welcome package with 3 colleagues who weren't on the session today, and maybe stoke them a little bit and see if they might be interested in registering for the learning journey with you. As I said, there's not a specific time you need to complete it by, but we're encouraging people to go through it either the length of a month or the length of a season. And the teachings and the worksheets will kind of prompt you to keep moving through it. And then once you finish all 4 modules, all 4 seasons, that's when you can get one of these really beautiful pins that Brittany has made. And there is a special responsibility of wearing those pins, and the welcome package covers that a bit more. So that's again for the first 200 healthcare professionals who go through it. Also explore the digital resource bundle. So many amazing resources in there for you to check out. That will be in the link that comes as well. And then we're asking for folks who get involved in this campaign, because we're trying to build momentum, even more so around this work in healthcare, is to tag us. So we don't actually have a Twitter hashtag, but if you tag us at Nourish Lead, we're looking to see who's doing the work and who's getting involved. That's also a way for other people to see who's doing the work and who's getting involved. Shortly, we'll also be making printable, downloadable poster art available for you, and there's going to be a series of 5 posters, and they include teachings or wisdom from different elders and knowledge keepers who have been part of this campaign. So those are available for you to put up in your workplace to attract colleagues into getting involved as well. You can also, if you're looking to build some engagement at your organization, we encourage you to host a film screening. So Nourish has come out with 2 films related to our Indigenous Foodways work in the last couple of years. The one that we just launched last month, Why Hospital Food Matters for Reconciliation. And that one features the work of Indigenous Food RX grantees. And then it's about 8 minutes. And then there's another one that many of you will remember called Meechum, and this highlights the traditional food program at the Sioux Lookout Meniyawin Health Center with Kathy Loon, another one of the past Nourish innovators who's on the Indigenous and Allies Advisory. That one is also under 10 minutes. Both of these films are on our YouTube. We really encourage you to use them, share them, screen them however you like. If you want to have someone from our team pop in to a screening, if you're hosting an event with your colleagues, we would be happy to do that to share more about the programming or the work. So check those out. And then lastly, we want to encourage you to sign up for the Nourish Newsletter if you haven't yet, so that you can keep posted about the campaign. And that's where we'll be posting information about seasonal meetups for folks who are going through the learning journey itself. And then not written is just call to action is like to really sit and think about like why this would matter to you to go through this work, why it could matter, and what there is to gain for your organization to go through this work, so that you can really be making the case to yourself to make the commitment, but also to your colleagues at work to have them come along and join with you, because I think you know, this is big work that takes all of us. And for settlers like myself, there's a lot of headway that we can make. And this journey is really meant to help us find our way in that path and find our work in the work of reconciliation and decolonization. And we've done it in a way that's really meant to invite us in, that's beautiful, and that respects and honors the teachings of the Indigenous collaborators who are at the heart, guiding this work, setting its directions, and telling us what needs to be in there. So stay in touch through these ways. And again, you'll get an email from our team. But yeah, you can go sign up to get started right away. So I think, Mara, that I'm going to pass it back over to you. I don't have any other final comments except for to say that it has been so beautiful to witness this journey since 2016 over the last 5 years, how it's come together, and to see so many contributors on this webinar who've stepped in different ways to make this possible. I just, this is not something that could have happened without all of the beads that I'm looking at now. All the if every bead represented a person, I think we would be starting to get at the extent to which this project has been a joint effort of so many partners. So Hawa, Miigwech, Nyawen, Masicho, to everyone who has contributed to this. We're looking forward to seeing you on the journey.
Miigwech, Haley. So I promised to save the sign up for the last, so I didn't send everybody on a cyber journey. So here's the information. If you would like to sign up on the Nourish website, it'll be there definitely right now, if not by the end of the day. You will be prompted via email, and you will be having lots of prompts through the email. There'll probably be 21 emails by the time you're done your journey, but they are designed to help you on your way, just so you don't get lost, and then you can have your own pace of doing it. So don't forget to download the worksheets as you go along and save your writing in there. And just thanks everybody for coming today. And I just wanted to invite anybody on the panel if they wanted to say any last words. We have 4 minutes left. If not, you can just unmute yourself and
I wanted to mention, I sent it out in the chat, but I wanted to mention that it takes me a couple of hours to handcraft / bead every single pin. Every pin I make is filled with love, traditional teachings, and medicines as well. I can't wait to see folks complete the learning journeys and receive and wear the pin. Miigwech.
which.
Are we sending people on their way, Meyer?
Well, I think so. I think we have 3 minutes ahead of time. This is very rare for us. So congratulations, Nourish team, on finishing on time. And for everybody for coming and offering all your words and questions in the chat, and anything that wasn't answered, I will follow up with via email. So miigwech everybody, and have a nice rest of your day.
Thanks, everyone.